Okay, so today's lesson is going to include some information about triangles and specifically about inequalities in triangles. So let's kind of start with some logical information that you probably could figure out intuitively. And as we look at these two triangles, we have an obtuse triangle and we have an acute triangle. And what conclusion can you make about the measure of an angle and the length of the side opposite of that angle? So if we're thinking this side and the angle opposite of it, and that angle, versus this side and the angle opposite of it. Okay, if you notice, as the angle gets bigger, that side opposite of it gets longer. So this one over here, the angle is fairly short, the side opposite of it is short. This one over here, the angle is an obtuse angle, and the side gets larger. So thinking logically, the larger the angle, the longer the side opposite of it. And the smaller the angle, the shorter the opposite side. And it goes the other way. So if you have a longer side, that means you're going to have a larger angle. And if you have a shorter side, you are going to have a smaller angle. Keeping in mind we're looking at opposite angles. So if we're talking about this side right here, the angle opposite would be this one over here. If we're talking about this green side here, this angle would be opposite of it. It's a cross or opposite. Okay, so that's basically what this is saying here. The triangle longer side theorem and the triangle larger angle theorem is just what we just said on the previous slide. Basically, the larger the angle, the longer the side. The longer the side, the larger the angle. Okay, so we are going to list the sides of the triangle in order from shortest to longest. Well, let's number our angles. Actually, the first thing we need to do before we do that is we need to figure out what the measure of that angle F actually is, because in order to order them least to greatest, we have to know the measure of all three angles. And we know, just recalling from before, that all three angles should add up to 180. So we know that 51 plus 47 plus angle F should equal 180. And if we add 51 plus 47 together and subtract it from 180, we get that angle F is 81 degrees. Okay, it wants to go from shortest to longest, which means we want to think about the smallest angle to the biggest angle. So I'm going to number them smallest to biggest. That just makes it a little bit easier. 47 is our smallest angle. So I'm going to call that angle number 1 because it's the smallest. 51 is the next, so I'm going to call that angle number 2. And then 81 is the biggest. So I'm going to call that number 3. So then we're just going to order them smallest to biggest. Well, here's going to be number 1, here's going to be number 2, and here's going to be number 3. So our shortest side, number 1, is DF, number 2 is FE, and number 3 is DE. So we just figured out angles smallest to biggest, and then those opposite sides smallest to biggest. Okay, now we're just going to do the other way. It says you're constructing a stage prop that shows a large triangular mountain. The bottom edge of the mountain is about 32 feet. So 32 feet down here. The left slope is 24 and the right slope is 26. Again, let's go ahead and order these. Number them 1, 2, 3, smallest to biggest, because we're going to order the sides smallest to largest. So here is our smallest, there's number 1. Here's our second smallest, there's number 2, and 32 is our biggest, so we're going to order that in order number 3. So then if we think about going opposite of it, our shortest is 24, opposite of it is angle L, so that's our smallest angle. Number 2 is 26, opposite of that is angle J, and then 32 is our longest, which is going to be angle K. So we ordered our angles smallest to biggest. Okay, why don't you go ahead, pause the video for a second, and do these two questions just like we did on the other slide, and then check back. Okay, so if you just look at what we have here, I have them ordered least to greatest, from shortest to longest, and from smallest to largest for your angles and your sides. So our next inequality that we are going to think about is the triangle inequality. And just so you know, you can't be given any random 3 sides and necessarily have it make a triangle. Sometimes the sides are too short and they won't actually connect to make a triangle. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. So we have this inequality theorem that tells you how you know if it makes a triangle or not. Basically, it's a series of 3 inequalities where the sum of any 2 sides has to be bigger than the third. So if you look at these 3 inequalities here, it says AB plus BC has to be greater than AC. That means that that side plus that side has to be longer than the third side. And you just write the inequality 3 different ways. AB plus BC, and then you have AC plus BC is greater than AB, and then you have AB plus AC is greater than BC. So you have to just pick 2 sides, and it has to be, when you add them together, it has to be larger than the third side. So what we're going to do next is look at, if I give you 2 sides of a triangle, what does that third side have to be in order to make it a triangle? Okay, so we have here, a triangle has one side length of 14 and another side length of 9. Describe the possible lengths of the third side, and we are going to use, in order to describe that, we are going to use a compound inequality. And I'll talk about what that is in here, just in case you don't remember, in just a second. So if we think about those 3 inequalities, we have 3 sides to our triangle. One is 14, one is 9, and we don't know the third side. We're going to call it x. So our 3 inequalities, if we write them, I pick 2 sides. 14 plus 9 has to be greater than that third side, which we don't know. Okay. 14 plus x has to be greater than 9. Okay, so we have 14 plus x is greater than 9, and then we also know that 9 plus x is greater than 14. And that's all the possible combinations of those 3 side lengths. 14 plus 9, 14 plus x, and 9 plus x is greater than 14. So if we just simplify these inequalities, we have 14 plus 9 is 23 is greater than x. And then if we subtract 14 from both sides, we get x is greater than -5. We'll talk about that in just a second. Then if we subtract 9 from both sides, we get x is greater than 5. Okay, so let's think about what these 3 inequalities mean that we just got from the first 3 that we wrote. Okay, so thinking logically, can a side length of a triangle be negative? Well, we can't have a length that's negative, so we know that one's not going to work. These other 2 numbers, basically what they tell us is this is going to be the longest possible side. This is going to be the shortest possible side that you could have in order to make it a triangle. So if we wanted to think about our range of side lengths that we could have, okay, our smallest side is going to be 5. Our largest side is going to be 23 that we could possibly have, and x will be somewhere in between. How you write a compound inequality is you put that x in between and you point your inequality arrows both in the same direction towards the smaller number. So what that says is all the possible values, all the possible lengths of the third side fall between 5 and 23. Notice it's not an or equals in any of that inequality. It is basically, so it can't be exactly 5. It has to be more than 5 and less than 23. Okay, so if we want to think about where did these 2 numbers come from, right? Well, the shortest that it could be we got when we when we subtracted the 2 sides that we had. So 14 and 9, the shortest that it could be was 5. And then the longest it could be was when we added them together to get 23. So if I have a triangle with 20 and 12, without having to write all of these inequalities down, you can if you want to, and we certainly could. But we know that the longest that third side could be, the max, is going to be 20 plus 12. And the smallest that it could be is going to be 20 minus 12. So we know the longest possible side length is 32. The shortest is going to be 8. So again, to write that as an inequality, we put our smallest on the left, largest on the right. X is going to fall somewhere in between. And we just point our inequality arrows pointing in the same direction towards the smaller number. Okay, Now we need to decide whether or not it is possible to construct a triangle with these side lengths. Okay, so we are going to need to write down those 3 inequalities that we talked about before, where you pick 2, it has to be greater than the third. So my first inequality I would have is 4 plus 9 is greater than 10. Okay, 4 plus 9 is greater than 10. 13 is greater than 10. Yep, that's a true statement. Okay, and then I have 4 plus 10 is greater than 9. Well, 4 plus 10 is 14, which is greater than 9, so that's a true statement. And then the last one we have is 9 plus 10 is greater than 4. Well, 9 plus 10 is 19, that is greater than 4. True statements. So since all of these 3 are true, then yes, it will make a triangle. Okay, the second one here in the middle, I have 8, 9, and 18. All right, so I have 8 plus 9 has to be greater than 18. 8 plus 18 has to be greater than 9. And 9 plus 18 has to be greater than 8. Okay, well, let's take a look and see if these statements are true. 8 plus 9 is 17. 17 is not greater than 18. Not true. So really, as soon as you find one of these is not true, that means it cannot make a triangle. Even though these 2 are both true, doesn't matter because this combination right here did not work. So that would be no, it cannot make a triangle. Okay, number 7 over here are 3 inequalities again. We've got 5 plus 7 has to be greater than 12. 7 plus 12 has to be greater than 5. And 5 plus 12 has to be greater than 7. Well, if we look at our very first one here, 5 plus 7 is 12. Now 12 is not greater than 12. There is not an or equal sign underneath of there, so this is not true, even though the others are. This one is true and this one is true. The fact that this first one is not true means that it is a no. Okay, and finally this last page here, this I actually made into a class kick, so you can go ahead and work on that rather than finishing it in here. Good luck.